As children grasped pencils and learned to write, he bled every day to master the use of a knife. While they learned to use social media, he was stapling and hacking systems. While they went on dates and learned about love, he lived as a disguised Russian spy. And while everyone else built their families and had their normal lives, he was fighting amidst a terrorist group, meaning he worked with his life on the line all the time, as this is Peter's story, the legendary assassin. In this world, there are heavily armed groups everywhere, where not even rulers can do anything, but they fear only one person, Peter. But the most surprising thing about this assassin is that he was a man in his 60s who looked like a second version of John Wick. Several suited people were on the floor talking about Peter now being hunted by thousands of assassins, questioning a man with a toy head if this was really so bad, and finally, asking if he was Peter. The man continues to say that no matter how much he thinks, it simply didn't make sense why he wasn't dead or under observation. Peter finally opens his mouth and says that even with thousands or tens of thousands watching him, they will never be able to find him because unfortunately, the Peter they were looking for. The end of his sentence is interrupted by the gangster's surprise, who questions if that was Peter indeed. 3 months ago, an old man named Mr. Bay was on a phone call, where the caller said that if he kept ignoring the calls and didn't come to visit the hospital, he would die in less than 3 months. Mr. Bay says he doesn't fear death. After all, he has witnessed life and death several times. Working 50 years for the organization, he has no regrets, not even a drop of regret. But now that he thinks about it, he never even took a photo in his life. A young girl walks in through the door saying she would like to buy elementary school textbooks, and with a smile on his face, Mr. Bay says that this old bookstore has all kinds of books. The girl asks if there are used books, and Mr. Bay says there are from 1960 to the new edition of 2020. The girl says it's for her brother, and the shop owner asks if she is a high school student, and if she is in the 3rd year, and again, the girl agrees. Peter places books on the table and the girl says they weren't those, as she only brought 1,000 wons and couldn't pay for all of them since they were new. But Mr. Bay says she doesn't need those books and she could take them. Mr. Bay adds that just by looking at her, it's noticeable that she loves her younger brother, so she should be good to him while she can, or she'll regret it in the future. The girl starts to get confused and calls Mr. Bay uncle, and asks if he ever regretted anything. Mr. Bay tells her that the more one lives, the more regrets one has. However, there's nothing to be done about the things of the past, so the girl should take care of her brother and just turn around and leave. Then it's shown the girl with a knife almost stabbing Peter, who just told her to turn around and leave, as he wouldn't kill her if she didn't continue this attempt. Peter continues explaining that he memorized the faces of all the students in school, but still had to be sure just to be safe, so he asked if she was in the 3rd year. However, the neighborhood school only goes up to the 2nd. And lastly, he had smelled blood, so he realized the girl was trying to hide the odor with cheap perfume. The girl panics and tries to attack Mr. Bay, but she feels a fear, a tremendous fear, as if she would die if she continued. But Peter just drops the books on the table, telling the girl to take them, because he knew the things said about her brother were true. Peter had been doing this for 50 years, so he knew when someone was telling the truth. Mr. Bay asks if she was from Glory Orphanage, just like him, and asks how the teaching method hasn't changed at all in decades, since in the organization, if voluntary service fails, Plan B goes into action. Peter grabs the girl by the neck and jumps, but not to hurt her as she thought, but saving her from several assassins falling from the ceiling, shooting at them. The old man continues to explain that if a mission fails, the volunteer also dies. The girl notices then that one of the bullets went through Peter's stomach, who keeps running with her, until he finds a gun and aims at the enemies. However, the assassins grab the girl as a hostage and then beat Peter, who says his body isn't moving as he wants. The enemies question if he really is Peter, and a man with a tattoo on his head, called 8 Tentacles, says that his deeds surpass everyone else's and occupy the first place, and the reputation of being the best is known by all, but when it comes to illness, he is nothing. Peter asks what's the reason behind trying to kill him, and the 8 Tentacles say that the boss is upset with him. Mr. Bay is astonished by this information, asking why, but is interrupted by the man who continues to explain that when he gets out, there will be thousands of people after his neck. After all, the reward for his head is 7.6 billion wons. Peter says that's funny because it's the same amount in his bank account, but the guy says that's right and now the money goes to someone else, so he asks the veteran to die by his hands and lands another punch on the old man. Another man grabs Peter by the neck and starts punching his belly intensely and then throws him away. The old man is very hurt, and when they go to check if he had already died, Peter throws a flash grenade, which goes off, creating a distraction for his escape. The agents start searching tirelessly for Peter, who was already in a playground, suffering from the pain of his wounds. Peter regrets not being able to fight properly and says he got old, remembering his life, which he had always been devoted to the organization. because while others held pencils in their hands, he bled 365 days a year to learn to hold a knife. While others learned to use social networks, he learned to staple and hack until his ears bled. While others learned about love, he became a Russian spy living with frostbite. While others had a normal life, he was fighting in a terrorist group to survive. But the situation changed when a new boss took over. He wanted to discard Peter for aging. Peter didn't want greetings or honor. He couldn't die like this, couldn't let them take his money. But the man falls to the ground unconscious. In the hideout of the 8 tentacles, his subordinates complain, saying they almost caught him and could have gotten the billions if they had killed him, while holding the photo of old Peter in hand. Then, someone arrives, wearing the same clothes as Peter, saying that that was his first photo. The subordinates are startled, but it was a strong, very muscular guy. Unlike Peter, who was old, the man also says he doesn't understand, because when he woke up, he was already like this. The subordinate says he came to the wrong place, but Peter doesn't care, because he just wanted to go to the 8 tentacles. One of the subordinates tries to advance with a punch, blocked by Peter, while the other tries to stab, but is knocked out before acting. The remaining subordinate grabs a knife, asking who sent him, but Peter answers, saying that those who master the use of cutlery are 3rd class, those who master any weapon are 2nd class, and those who can use anything and master it as a weapon are 1st class. Advancing towards Peter, the subordinate tries to stab, but has his knife thrown away with the tentacle and his neck tied by it too, showing Peter's combat talent. Peter then grabs the man by the neck and throws him into a pot where they were cooking the tentacles. Almost unconscious, the subordinate asks who he was and why he came there, but Peter explains that even if thousands of people die and rise, the old Peter they were looking for is already dead. In the 8 tentacles car, he tells the girl from before that soon Peter will be officially announced as wanted, so she needs to capture him before, as his life expectancy is low due to cancer. Peter continues in hiding, searching for 8 tentacles everywhere, but he can't find him at all, saying his life had been prolonged. Heading to the subway, Peter finds himself shirtless in the mirror there, which astonishes everyone, but he doesn't care, realizing that the bullet from his waist has disappeared and the cancer pain that was terrifying him is also gone, wondering what happened to make him young again. Even though he doesn't know the reason, this was good, as they wouldn't find the trail of old Peter, which would make his life much easier. But Peter realizes he needs to get new clothes, until he notices 2 gangsters talking and smoking in a no-smoking area. Peter approaches them, saying that this is a no-smoking area and asking if they could smoke elsewhere, but the gangsters ignore him, and when he insists, they become aggressive, threatening to break him if he doesn't mind his manners and even hitting him in the face. At first, Peter tries to ignore them both, but he locks the door, saying that he won't waste time with people like that, and then delivers a left hook to the rib of one of the mobsters. The other draws a knife, asking if Peter knew who he was. However, he's answered by the guy, indicating that he was holding the knife wrong, since if he continues to hold it that way, it will cut his fingers while swinging. Then the mobster advances towards him, trying to stab him, but Peter simply dodges and lands a straight to his neck, saying that if he had stabbed him, he would have killed them both. The mobster asks who he was, but Peter says he didn't know what kind of illegal stuff he did, but if he finds out who he was, he would die there. That guy then changed clothes and grabbed a cell phone, showing his bank account that was empty. Peter remembers growing up in Glory Orphanage that was run by a small religious organization, and now after 50 years has become an influential cartel in politics and business sectors, using the Glory Club as a mask for the true organization. Meanwhile, a man was sitting in the chair of a butcher shop in front of 8 tentacles, who said that the man wasn't Peter and by his level, he alone would defeat him. The man says that the Glory Club was being too greedy and they would die young, relying too much on Peter. 8 tentacles tries to cut the conversation short, saying that ending it quickly is less painful, but the man was prepared, with several subordinates behind 8 tentacles, who try to attack him from all directions, but are easily defeated. After the fight, 8 tentacles shows himself victorious over them, and it is revealed that he is a rank B+ within the organization and is the number 1 in the national jiu-jitsu ranking, thus advancing towards the last man. In his hideout, 8 tentacles says that the cameras were destroyed and there was no evidence of weapons, so the only one capable of that was Peter. 8 tentacles asks the girl to inform him of Peter's whereabouts if she finds out. Then, in the dining room, there was a man sitting waiting for them. 8 tentacles asks if he had made a reservation, but Peter reveals himself, saying that he didn't have a reservation, but he had stored resentment, a resentment of 7 billion. 8 tentacles orders the doors to be locked and gives 2 options, either inform Peter's whereabouts or die with a bullet in the head, but Peter simply responds by saying that he is the one they are looking for. 8 tentacles is puzzled, as for him, Peter was an old man, and asks if the guy is crazy. But Peter continues mocking, saying he killed the 2 subordinates. 8 tentacles still thinks it's a joke and says the gun is real, so what was his relationship with Peter? The guy tells him that to find out, he must kill him. Then, the subordinate with a gun fires a shot, but before aiming properly, Peter hits his neck with a toothpick, knocking him down. Eight Tentacles is impressed, as no one in the country could do that, and then asks if he would like to join the Glory Club, while advancing to shoot at the guy, who just lifts a table, but the mobster notices something, red liquid on the floor, and starts mocking the protagonist, saying that it's not a movie, so he doesn't block bullets with a table, but upon closer inspection, Peter wasn't there, and it was chili sauce. Worried, the mobster starts looking for where the boy would be, until he sees him on the ceiling, and upon realizing he's been noticed, Peter throws chili sauce in his enemy's face, hitting his wrist with the gun and emptying his cartridge with the other hand to finally punch him in the face. Eight Tentacles is impressed. That wasn't a child, but Peter doesn't care much about his opponent's reactions, holding him by the neck and flipping him upside down, knocking Eight Tentacles to the ground, who seeks a sense in his defeat, as even facing countless opponents over the years, he never lost to any of them. And he remembers the do-or-die tactic, because they will encounter strong opponents one day, and against that, they must seize the moment and catch them while their guard is down. At that time, Eight Tentacles had developed an ability that only he could use, and his instructor had said that the most dangerous thing is to turn your back thinking you've already won, so he shouldn't trust himself so much. So, the mobster grabs Peter's foot, then wraps his arm and his torso, completely restraining him while shouting that he has much more experience than the boy. But Peter replies that it's been a long time, interrupting Eight Tentacles, who notices that instead of Peter, he attacked the subordinate. Eight Tentacles panics and grabs the girl, saying he will give her to the man. The girl tries to resist, but he tells her to shut up. Peter agrees and Eight Tentacles are happy, saying the deal is closed and pretending that nothing happened today, then he should leave. But as Eight Tentacles try to leave, Peter talks about the do-or-die rule, because the moment he turns his back on the opponent and thinks he has won, his head will fly. Peter then mimics Eight Tentacles with his jiu-jitsu technique and spins his whole body. At the top of the city, someone says Eight Tentacles died and the security cameras in the store were removed. And that was funny. An old man on the brink of death shot returned after a day and killed 4 assassins without leaving a trace. Therefore, this man reveals himself as the leader of the organization and tells all the assassins from Glory to go after Peter. Walking down a street, Peter observes a billboard of the Glory Club with his face, saying to donate for the elderly, and assumes that it was for assassins to identify him. But there was no reason for them to look for him anymore, as he was the one looking for glory. But he needed help. Only one person came to his mind, but she made him feel a little uncomfortable. Walking to a place full of beggars, he quickly goes to a place full of flyers and presses between a specific combination of illegal activities, opening an entrance that leads to a completely fancy apartment, saying that the place has been restored, and upon feeling a needle pointed at his neck, he says the girl doesn't need that, as she is blind. A woman pointing a sharp cane at Peter's neck says she will take care of some bodies, and then starts feeling Peter, who was a young person who didn't smell like alcohol, so he wasn't a bum living in that area, but the thirst for blood was too high for just any thug, and then assuming that it was the Glory Group that sent him and then attacking Peter several times. He simply dodged easily until he hit a pillar. The woman called him Kitty and said he should be careful, as the wallpaper was expensive, while throwing her cane towards his head, but Peter dodges until he notices that the woman was trying to kick him, while questioning if she was really blind and throwing her to the ground. The girl said she didn't think Glory had someone as strong as him, and was impressed. However, she felt no thirst for blood coming from him now, wondering what she could do, as killing a debilitated person is part of the job, until she calls her dog, which quickly tries to bite him, but is surprised by a pat from Peter and accepts him. A few moments later, the girl held Peter's face while asking how he had become younger, because his skin was smooth and no longer had that old smell as before, while Peter asked her to stop, as he had been in that position for almost half an hour. The girl starts to mimic the way Peter had died, thinking that was a method that made him rejuvenate, until he reprimands her. Some time passes and the girl asks if Peter would like to face Glory alone, which he says yes, and would enter the Eye of the Storm, becoming an assassin of Glory, as it was the only way to have them in the palm of his hand and make them obey. The girl questions Peter, as this was madness, until she notices that he had become younger and no one recognized him anymore, so by entering Glory, he would be helping to capture Peter while the organization was in Peter's hands. The girl says he was terrifying, and Peter says she was more and tells her to stay away. The woman adds that it was impossible, because to join Glory, he needed to come from their orphanage. But Peter says there was a way, and it was to join Divine Glory School. A few days passed, and Peter was at school, using the name Kim Sungu, while several girls surrounded him, saying how handsome he was, and asking him to go to the auditorium. Kim agrees and follows one of the girls there, thinking about how Glory School was actually a unit for creating assassins, so the plan was to join that class and become an assassin. The girl continues explaining that it was impossible, due to some kind of listening device placed in Peter's ear, but the boy says there was an exception, which was to present himself as an assassin, which would enrage the others in that class. After saying he wanted to be an assassin, the others become enraged, asking if he had seduced a girl named Yejin. One of these boys, the one who asked, was her boyfriend, the same girl who was flirting with Peter and brought him to the auditorium. The boy then tried to throw a punch, but Kim retaliates with a direct punch to the forehead, but Peter stops in the middle of the blow and just flicks him. A teacher interrupts, taking Peter to the principal's office. Meanwhile, other students like the girl who accompanied 8 Tentacles remembers who he was and asks if he was trying to clean up the school, and 2 men were discussing finding out who the boy was, and maybe even killing him. While sitting on a bench, the girl who accompanied 8 Tentacles, named Yunbil, notices someone's presence, who sits next to her, and it's Peter, who are questioned why he's there, but the boy just says people were following him, so he escaped, and asking why she's there. The girl says she's not hungry, but Peter notices a dish much larger than his on her lap. She asks Peter if he's trying to kill her because of him, the company has been spying on her all the time. But Peter says she should thank him because if she's eating today, it's because of him, while the girl says she survived on her own, and he didn't know what kind of place that was and how scary he was. Moreover, he didn't even know who she was, so a stranger couldn't do anything. However, Kim says she could help him because she was in the same boat as him, someone who didn't know anything, and even calls her by her real name, Lee Yuna. The girl is amazed, and turns to Peter, but he had already disappeared from there. At the same time, some students were bullying the teacher, saying they would report him for using his authority in the classroom, and they would upload the video on TikTok to lower his grades, and then the student hits the teacher, throwing him away. Then they notice Kim Sung-gu, who asks if they had hit the teacher. The student says that even if he had hit him, what was he going to do? So he should get out of there before he's the one who gets hurt. The student then spits on Peter's uniform and tries to throw a punch, but Peter dodges it, and so on with all his failed attacks. The protagonist sweeps his legs, knocking him to the ground. While one of his friends grabbed a brick and tried to attack him from behind, but before he could, Peter breaks the brick with a punch. A few moments later, the students apologize to the teacher out of fear of the protagonist, who, after the students run away, asks if the teacher is okay, who begins to scold him, but Peter seems not to care until he notices the phone of one of the students and then receives a kick from the teacher, which he easily defends against, and the teacher says his eye for people was still sharp and that he wasn't an ordinary boy. As evidence, not a drop of the cup he was holding had been spilled on the ground, asking Sung-gu where he learned that and why. The boy then tells him he learned it for revenge because he had lost his family, his home, his money, so he was like the dead. The teacher then asks what he thinks about joining the volunteer club, and Peter is delighted because he was orchestrating all this to eventually make the teacher, called Lee Guanjiwo, notice him, or rather, the Glory Assassin's instructor. In the hallway, the teacher explains that the Divine Honor School has an assassin development room, but it's more like a volunteer club because few select students learn the assassin's way of life, and Lee Sung-gu was a rare transfer student, so it wouldn't be easy, but the teacher opens the room for him, saying the protagonist was welcome, then showing a room full of ordinary teenagers, talking, playing, and having fun. Peter questions if that really was a place where assassins are created, and the teacher goes to his desk, where he says Kim Sung-gu was the new volunteer who will work with them from today onwards. Yunbil is amazed but soon notices a glance from the protagonist at her, who tells her not to say anything. Soon, 2 classmates come to talk to him, one gigantic and the other missing part of his ears. The one missing part of his ears starts to say that only people from the Glory Orphanage were admitted there, so he was an outsider. The teacher says they should have a welcome party, and 2 students say they should do the punch, the bloody punch. The 2 students from before ask if Kim Sung-gu knew how to fight, who says he knew a little, and then he is greeted by a double attack, one with a knife and the other trying to grab him. Both are blocked by him, and then they begin to say that people like Kim don't know what they're risking their lives for, and the other adds that they fight to become the world's best assassin, just like Apostle Peter, so there was no room for a nepotist like Sung-gu. Both step away from the boy, who says he's tired of this and asks them to attack him all at once. Both attack again in the same movement, and then, a few moments later, the class cheers for being able to defeat the student and even make him run away in fear. In the hallway, Peter encounters Lee Yuna, who asks why he underestimates the assassin class. He pretends to be clueless, saying he always does his best, but Yuna says unlike other students, he wasn't even sweating and asks why, as he's suspicious in that school, and what he gains by hiding his strength. She pins Peter against the wall, but he simply ducks, avoiding her and the questions, saying it's lunchtime, but it turns out it's already midnight. Meanwhile, a driver is happy to earn $1,000,000 just to rent his bus until the passenger with hundreds of suitcases arrives, and he asks him if he'd like to bet. Guess what's in the suitcase? Moments pass, and he's amazed, wondering how he lost the bet, but he knows what he saw, the suitcase was moving. Meanwhile, the teacher tells his students to pay attention because they have a new guest. He was the president of the Deha group, Choi Eun-shine, one of the sponsors of the Glory Club, and the winning team will receive a volunteer certificate with the president's recommendation, meaning they'll officially become assassins. The students ask what the mission was, and the teacher says the mission was recovery, as there have been several kidnappings of teenagers recently, and one of the kidnapped children is the president's only son. One of the students asks why they don't call the police, and the teacher tells them the president wants revenge and they only need to save his son, so they should raise their hands if they want to participate in this mission, and if they don't take this mission, they'll stay here for another 2 years until they become officially assassins. The whole room falls silent, except for the duo of students from before, the protagonist and Yuna, who say they will participate in the mission. The teacher says the first step of the mission is to have fun at an amusement park, with the 4 Glory group members there. The 2 brothers were watching 2 women dancing samba and wondering why they were wearing bikinis in amusement parks, and if that was fun or something, while Luna and Peter were walking together until some girls flirted with Kim, asking for his TikTok, but mentally he didn't know what TikTok was, and Yuna only thought about the mission, remembering the mission given, which was at that park where the president's son was kidnapped, so they needed to save the hostage and defeat the kidnapper, but he was last seen there, but is he still there and alive? Yuna entered into several doubts, while Peter seemed unconcerned, saying they should first look at a Viking boat. At the location, the attendant told the students they could only enter with a reservation, and they complained about it, especially the brothers. While the attendant asked them to download the app, Yuna then said that the Atlantis and the haunted house were full, while the brothers mocked her, saying she wasn't even thinking about the mission. Some moments pass, and the brothers are on the carousel having as much fun as they can, and then on the bumper cars, while Yuna and Peter are at a shooting booth, where the attendant says it's very easy and not profitable, but it's a lie, as he weighted the targets. Yuna tries first, picking up the fake gun and after minutes, winning all the prizes with Peter. Everyone gathers, and they seem to be having fun, inviting Peter to join them, which reminds him of his childhood, thinking it's for them to enjoy, as they never knew when they'd have another chance like this. A few minutes pass, and Yuna sits on a bench alone, as she had ditched the guys to eat alone, and then, looking at her phone, she notices it's connected to the president's son's AirPods, thinking he might still be nearby, and then following it, she realizes the signal is coming from the women's restroom, wondering if someone could have taken her earbuds, or if it would be someone with the same name, then entering the restroom and seeing a girl putting on makeup with AirPods in her ears. Yuna then approaches her, with a scary look, asking where she got them, but the girl screams, and her boyfriend shows up, scolding the girl, as his girlfriend said she had tried to steal, and then, he pushes Yuna and then tries to slap her. Meanwhile, the 3 boys talk about where Yuna could be, but none of the 3 have this information. However, they didn't need to worry, as she was the danger. And then, Yuna had defeated the girl's boyfriend and almost stabbed his ear, but stops and continues asking about the AirPods. A few moments later, the girl was back with the group, saying she found where the president's son's AirPods were lost, but Peter says they thought of the same place, as no matter where you are, the park is always crowded. So where someone would easily disappear is where the kidnapper seems normal, or it's normal to scream or jump on someone out of fear. And on the ride reservation site, the haunted house is sold out, but he didn't see anyone there all day. Heading over there, the group starts to focus, while the brothers and Yuna argue over silly reasons. Peter was focused wondering why there was no one there, and then tells the group to prepare, as the mission is about to begin. The brothers question if they'll be okay, but Kim Sungo says they're already halfway there and he understands that from the beginning, the plan was for them to be kidnapped. Meanwhile, the teacher enters the instructor's room in a panic, telling him to call them, but the students weren't answering, and the teacher reveals that a man named Park Sang-do was in charge of the scheme, who was a candidate for apostle, expelled from glory for being uncontrollable. Yuna and Peter are tied to a pillar, while Sang-do reveals that he used chloroform, a drug used in movies all the time. However, when normal people faint because of it, they sleep with their mouths open, so Yuna, who was with her mouth closed, falls into her own plan. But as Sang-do is about to attack, his phone starts vibrating. It's the teacher, saying that if he lays a finger on the kids, he will risk his life to kill him. Sang-do ignores the threat, saying he hasn't received news from his sunbae for a long time, and asks why so much violence, wondering if he's afraid the professor will leave the kids crippled. The kidnapper suggests a bet. When the teacher arrives, how many pairs of legs remain intact, and if he guesses right, he'll spare Choi Yun-chang's son. The teacher trembles in fear, while the brothers shout to search that room, as Yuna and Sungu are so weak that they must have become targets already. Seeing this, Sang-do orders the teacher to hurry up. Meanwhile, Yuna nudges Sungu with her foot, trying to wake him up, but he asks what she's doing since he wasn't even asleep. The girl starts trying to untie herself, while Peter is already completely untied, as he untied himself just in case something happened. While the girl explains to him that this isn't a simple kidnapping, as Sang-do is affiliated with Glory, but the guy already knew that. Meanwhile, the brothers say that for a common worker, Sang-do was quite brave. There was no problem in ending things here, but they were in the middle of the mission, so if he didn't want to die, he must tell them where Choi Yun-chang's son is. Sangdo says that for students, they have quite filthy mouths, but as he likes it, he'll make a bet with them, that if they win, he'll do whatever they want, even release the son of the Deha group president, but if they lose, they'll give him one of their legs. They agree, and then they try to advance together, but Sangdo says he likes fair fights, throwing one of his knives to the guy with the cut ears, named Dako Hyung. The battle unfolds, and Hyung proves to be dominant until he's almost hit, and then he notices something: the knife given to him has no edge. Yuna and Peter arrive meanwhile, but the brothers tell them not to interrupt, as the fight is theirs, and if they don't win, they won't win either. Remembering the past, the last test at the Glory Orphanage is the Infernal Month, where the children are thrown into a forest with a gun and a bullet, which could be used for anything: betray a friend, kill some animal, or even for themselves, but they refuse to give up and save the bullet until the end, where they used it against a bear. But out of the 118 children in this test, only they survived, and then they heard the legend that Peter, 58 years ago, had set a record with no estimate of surpassing. He spent the Infernal Month without using a single bullet. Since then, 10 years had passed. They tried to become like Peter, to become the best, and Sangdo was just a hurdle in their way. Jay, the sturdier twin, holds Sangdo with all his might while waiting for Hyung to attack, who tries to aim for the opponent's face. But Sangdo merely suggests cutting the arm instead of the leg while holding Hyung's hand, who releases the knife to Jay, who tries to stab him from below, but defending with his own knife, Sangdo shatters the boy's knife, asking if they could really become like Peter. That was no ordinary knife, but a kukri, a Nepalese machete. It weighs 3 times more than a regular dagger, and Sangdo had trained with it his whole life, as it was faster than a knife and heavier than an axe, making it a perfect killing weapon. The brothers once again advance on Sangdo but are easily defeated by his perfect fencing. Then, Sangdo says he'll claim his reward. Yuna screams, trying to make him stop, along with the teacher who was still on the line, but the only thing that stops him from continuing the act of cruelty is Sungu, who asks him if he would like to double the bet, offering his arms, his legs, and even his neck. Sangdo says he's interested and agrees to the bet, throwing the sword, but Peter picks up a flowered tray and says that's more than enough for a fair fight. Sangdo starts laughing and then says he won't go easy on him, advancing against the protagonist who just dodges and defends against his blows. His enemy questions how many blows the tray can take, as he delivers an extremely strong blow to the tray. The teacher, driving to the scene still desperate, thinks about how he couldn't let his past repeat itself again, remembering when he had to face Sangdo in a betting house, a rank B team against just him, and that's where his life as an assassin ended. It didn't matter if the chainsaw was stronger, what mattered was that he was a monster and was wielding the sword. Peter manages to defend the blow, but the tray is shattered. Sangdo begins to mock the boy, saying his only weapon broke, and Yuna thinks about helping him. Then, Peter says that thanks to him, he now had a weapon, and a kukri wasn't meant to be wielded so fiercely, so he was surprised. Sangdo takes off his coat and throws it towards Peter, intending to cover his eyes while advancing, but the boy not only dodges and defends with a pillow but also moves behind him and strikes his neck. Fortunately, Sangdo manages to defend with his hand, asking if the boy was really a student for attacking his carotid artery in the neck without hesitation. Peter simply ignores it and keeps advancing, with several attempts to attack that are narrowly defended by the kukri. Then, Peter steps back and advances again until he notices he was lightly hit in the face. Sangdo then draws knives from inside the kukri and starts advancing, now with speed matched due to the weight of the weapon, but swinging completely carelessly, until he manages to attack Peter's neck. But halfway through, Sangdo drops the knife. Peter starts to mock him, but the mobster notices that from the beginning, the target was his hand, not his neck, because without the hand, he couldn't attack. Sangdo asks what he did to his hand, and the boy explains that the extensors, flexors, and abductors, the median, radial, and ulnar nerves, every ligament, muscle, and nerve he needs to hold something were cut. From the beginning, Peter never planned to kill him. Sangdo then realizes he wasn't ordinary, and hundreds, no, thousands of men were devoured by that boy, who crushes the rest of the tray and wraps it around his hand, saying that to dispel the idea that a tray wouldn't defeat an iron knife, he will destroy a rock with an egg, a Korean saying meaning that something fragile can destroy even a rock. Sangdo then remembers his childhood, where he was bullied, imagining every day killing those who did it to him, but he had no power or strength to fight them until a certain incident, where one of the boys tied him up with several dogs and suggested a bet. Sangdo's legs began to move on their own, and then he realized that bets made him stronger. Dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, every time he bet his life, he became more powerful. That was his addiction because he always won. But, hit by a punch from Peter, Sangdo is thrown away. But Sangdo starts screaming, pulling out a grenade, afraid of Peter, saying that if he continues to approach, he will blow up the bags with the gas tube on the ceiling, which will kill everyone unless he kneels. But Peter reacts faster, advancing and putting the grenade in Sangdo's mouth before he can react, saying he knows what happens if he pulls the pin, so if he doesn't want to die, he should keep his mouth shut, removing the pin from the grenade and putting it on his finger. So, he continues to beat the mobster until he knocks him down, and then puts the pin back into the grenade and tells Sango to get up because he's not done yet, which he kneels and starts to apologize. The professor enters the room and sees that scene of Sangdo being spared. He is astonished. The same Sangdo who had destroyed his life was begging Kim Sung-go to let him live. And that's how the incident ended. The president's son was safely rescued, all kidnapped children were released, and Park Sangdo was taken to Glory's headquarters, but the professor still suspected Kim. However, since he said it wasn't him, there was no reason to comment on it. And after that, they officially became assassins, who were in the elevator, descending to a floor where they had been asked to go, coming face to face with several tall muscular women. Hyung and Jae get scared, telling them to close the door until they notice another woman behind, who said she was waiting for them. They follow the woman passionately, while Yuna and Peter accompany them. The woman says she will guide the way for them, and the president was very interested in the new students, as they saved young Master Yenjil, heir of the Deha group, so they were ordered to take care of them, receiving a huge banquet, quality suits, and then, they begin to feel happy for receiving this treatment. The girl then takes them to an armory room, where she says is the main event, as the Deha group is the company with the best weapons in the world, and as they are responsible for assisting the assassins of glory in all aspects of combat. To congratulate them for becoming official assassins, the president asked them to take as many weapons as they wanted. At first, the brothers say they do not fight with weapons, but after a few minutes, they are full of them, while Yuna observes the knives with Damascus steel and knives with S30V steel. But what is strange is Kim, who instead of taking a conventional weapon, when questioned by the girl, he says he will only take a fountain pen, and then the girl says she will escort them to the president's room. The brothers start to complain about going back and forth, but since the president has called them, they must go, but the girl corrects them, as the president said to escort only Sunggu. Everyone, including Peter, is impressed, while the brothers complain about this preferential treatment towards him. And entering the president's room, he says that the young man was very similar to Peter. Remembering the past, where in 1978, during the war, the son of the Deha group had been kidnapped by the Russians, and torturing a Russian soldier to find out where Unchang was. The soldier says that the only way to save the child was to give the missile that Korea and the United States had created to Russia, and if they refuse, he will end the life of the Deha group's son, which made the president panic. But he soon tries to calm down by saying that the US Delta Force was sent to Moscow, but he is soon interrupted by one of his employees, who mentions that the Delta Force has been eliminated. The president starts to despair and agrees with his employee to go to the Church of Honor. Arriving at the location, the desperate president starts banging on the door with all his might until he is attended by the priest, who asks him why he is going to the confessional so late, but the president was in such deep despair that he only says that he will give support for 10 or even 100 years if they recover his son from the Russians with the best of the apostles created. The priest then says he did not know what he was talking about, and that his only option was to pray, as everything will happen according to God's will. The president becomes even angrier, saying that he needs more than prayers, but soon he is reassured, as the priest tells him that the missile of God had already arrived in Moscow. Peter was on a motorcycle heading to Moscow, and the priest referred to him in this way. But the president was still desperate, questioning if everything would be alright, as 3 forces that had reached there were annihilated, and asking what an apostle could do alone, but the priest tells him that he will do everything, as even alone, he is more than enough, as his son is the strongest. Peter had just arrived on a train full of Russians, who asked how he got there and if he was alone, and the young man agreed, shooting a Russian in the head and subsequently, everyone on the train, and concluding that the number of bullets he has corresponds to the exact number of people on that train. Entering another car, a Russian was holding Choi Chang in his arms, with a gun to his head, saying that if he didn't want him to put a bullet in the head of the Deha group's son, he should drop the weapon. The Russian continues to say that he had heard of Peter before, referring to him as the monster, the one who was the only one to survive in the places he enters, but thought he was younger. Peter raises his hands and says in Korean to Unchang that when he counts to 3, the boy should dodge, and then he starts counting. The Russian starts to panic, ordering him to kneel and speak in Russian, but when he reaches 3, he throws a coin at the Russian's head, killing him, and Peter continues to say that he will speak Russian from now on, bidding farewell to Major Lieutenant Yevgeny Andreev of the KGB's 1st Division. Choi Chang thanks for being saved, referring to Peter as Hyung and saying he will reward him, but Peter replies that he did not come to save him, but to save the future of the Deha group, so they had a long way back. Returning to the president, he says that thanks to Peter, he was still alive. Even after 40 years, he had not forgotten the face of the savior, so he says that Peter must be the boy's grandfather, as he was just like him when he was young. Peter thinks about how long it had been since someone had scared him so much, but he is happy, saying that the fragile boy had become a bold man. Woonchang asks Sungo why he only took a pen from the arsenal, being answered by the boy that he was happy with just that. The president continues to say that he will not let his grandson leave like that, so he will give him one more little gift. A long time ago, Sungo's grandfather used a similar model to save him, showing him a motorcycle, which he refers to as the pinnacle of Deha Group technology, St. Petrus V4, a powerful motorbike developed by Deha, capable of reaching up to 527 km per hour, the fastest in the world, unofficially, and with stealth function, which allows it to interrupt any type of signal, so he would not need to worry about GPS or security cameras during missions. Yuna appears saying that the motorcycle was very cool, and Sungo says he didn't need all this, while the brothers ask if they can trade all their weapons for the motorcycle, to which he replies no. Peter then tosses a helmet to Yuna, telling her to ride the motorcycle until he is called by the instructor through a call, saying that the Glory personnel want to see them. And then, everyone goes to the Glory headquarters, the brothers on scooters, while Sungu and Yuna are on the motorcycle. Finally, they arrive at the Church of Honor. The brothers start to mock, saying that being popular is tiring, and they will soon be rank S, while Sungo asks if Yuna is ready, until they enter the church, coming face to face with the cult. Yuna begins to think about the revelations, missions that the Glory assassins receive according to their individual rankings. In other words, they receive revelations, and then the brothers go to get their missions, but receive one's written fight. Questioning the priest about why they were in this situation, he responds that newcomers do not receive missions, offering them celestial blood. However, the priest pours celestial blood on Hyung's head, saying he was expecting them, but angrily, Hyung bites the badge, saying that there are always idiots who do not know their place because they cannot distinguish the wheat from the chaff, turning angrily to the priest asking if they should fight them to challenge their ranks, advancing against a man with a scar on his face. Hyung tries to kick him, but the man dodges, along with Jae who tries to punch him, again evaded. With several consecutive attacks being dodged, they reach the benches, where the man realizes that Hyung has disappeared, but then realizes that he is holding his foot, preventing him from moving, while Jae tries to attack him, but the man says that when he was young, he also dreamed of being like Peter, so he will not go easy as he needs to show dreamers what the real world is like, taking a stab and piercing Jae's hands, who then receives a punch. Yuna starts screaming for them to stop, but is intercepted by another man who puts his hands on her and Sungu, asking how it feels to see the real world as it truly is. This was Director Jang, a rank B. He explains that normal assassins who have reached this rank are called specials because the targets of Glory's rank D are ordinary people, those of rank C are gangsters, ranks B fight against other assassins, rank A fight with national level assassination missions, and as long as one is an assassin, they must wield a dagger until they die to reach the top of Glory, giving their all to the point of vomiting blood. He continues by saying that to become a rank A, one must dedicate their entire life as an assassin. However, they will never reach rank S through effort alone, as those at the top of Glory, the 12 apostles, are unattainable. The scarred man continues to beat the brothers, asking if he would like him to tell him how to become an apostle. The boy asks what the hell he is talking about, and then with his fist going towards Hyung's face, he says he needs to die and be born again. Yuna continues screaming that it was madness, and the man next to them calls her an 8-tentacled lackey and tells her to give up, as she is not qualified to be an assassin, and who knows if she could afford medication for someone. However, he is interrupted by Sungu, who grabs his hand, telling him not to cross the line. The man starts shouting that the newcomer would like to fight him, while Sungu remembers the conversation with the blind woman who told him not to stand out, as it makes no sense for him to defeat Sangdo, a rank A, because with his skills, it was only a matter of time before Glory became suspicious of him, so not only the plan but everyone would be in danger, so to defeat Glory, he should pretend to be a rank D, being brought back to reality with a punch in the face. But Peter asks him to let them take them to the hospital, as one of them has passed out and the other has a deep cut, and their lives will be in danger if they are not taken to the hospital, repeating the commandment of not speaking lightly of the apostles. But the man cares little, saying that to take them to the hospital, he must give up his voluntary license. After a few minutes, they leave with the injured brothers, who begin to lament, with Hyung saying that as a leader, he should show the cool side to them, even though they lost their licenses. But he is soon comforted while crying with a bike helmet by Sungo, who tells them to go eat. On the motorcycle, Yuna asks Sungo what she should do to become stronger, and he replies not to ask stupid questions, but Yuna questions if he is really okay, as his licenses were taken and he is weak, obviously things will be taken from them. Sungo interrupts her from finishing, saying she is annoying, but Yuna grabs him, saying that it doesn't change the fact that she is still weak. Peter just accepts, saying how annoying she is. Later at the church, the assassins were saying how refreshing it was to beat up the newcomers, as competing for their place was annoying, and how Sungo's gaze, which they referred to as a gigolo, was full of anger, until they noticed him praying in the church pew. The assassins start mocking, asking if he came back to take a beating or if he came to reconsider for interfering, but Peter ignores this, asking if they really needed to go so far, and says he will show them something they will never see in their lives, the skills of an apostle of rank S. The assassins start laughing, saying the boy didn't know how this world works, calling his friend, Zhang, to teach him a lesson, but Zhang was afraid, even though he was a rank D student, whose name he doesn't even remember, and he is not armed, but definitely, those were not the eyes of a rank D. His friend asks if he was afraid of a little child, but Zhang disagrees, saying that in this field there is an unwritten rule, that if insubordination occurs against a higher rank, the senior has all the rights to execute the junior, then throwing a book towards Peter, imagining him raising his left arm to block it, leaving his ribs unprotected for the attack, which will make him grab that hit spot, forcing him to bend over. But the ribs were not the target, but the eyes. However, the man is struck by the rosary, wondering if that one was really common, then having his head ripped off in his fight prediction. His companion wakes him up, asking why he was standing distracted, and Zhang thinks about why he couldn't defeat, as even before it happens, he has died 1,000 times. Having learned one thing from the countless battles he has had throughout his life, Zhang can sense if he will lose a battle before it even begins, but still, the boy is on a completely different level, but he prefers to die than face the consequences of that, then advancing towards Peter, kneeling, asking for forgiveness, as he was wrong, but Peter interrupts him, saying that his ability to foresee death was what saved him today. The boy walks towards the door, coming face to face with the blind woman, who asks why he went looking for trouble and what would happen if they found out, but Peter says nothing will happen, as a rank B assassin lost to a rank D without even taking a punch, and he won't say anything for being humiliated. The woman thinks she was worried, that's why she went after him, but if he stayed quiet, he wouldn't have to get so angry. Peter ignores her, gets on his motorcycle, and drives away with her. The next day, the instructor shows great anger for losing their licenses, and the brothers are afraid to admit they got beaten up, until Zhang enters the school and calls the kids. The brothers start calling him a ghost and ask if he wants to fight again, but Zhang says he just came to deliver the licenses. Jae and Hyung start talking about how they thought he was a jerk, but in reality, he is a good person, while Zhang just looks at Sungu, thinking he is scary. However, Sungu is only concerned with delivering Yuna's license, but he can't find her anywhere. Going to the training room, the girl was punching the training dummy while remembering past fights with Sang-do and the scarred man, but in the end, feeling sad for being weak and her brother being in danger. Sungu finds her and hands her the license, but Yuna rejects it, saying she doesn't have the right to carry it. Sungu asks if it's because of her brother that she's calling herself pathetic and still trying to become an assassin, something she's not cut out for. Yuna tells him to shut up because he doesn't know what he's talking about, and Sungu agrees, saying he really doesn't know much about her, but he knew one thing, that her younger brother wasn't her biological brother, and he asks what happened to her brother. Yuna remembers her past where her brother used to call her to play with him on the carousel, but she would refuse, saying they weren't family and he wasn't even her blood brother, as she had been left in a metro station locker since the day she was born, and should have died, but unfortunately was saved and sent to an orphanage, where food and clothes were abundant, but it wasn't comfortable. Family and friends, Yuna never had the courage or intention to make them because after everything, she wouldn't want to be abandoned again. Being alone wasn't actually bad, it was good, and that's what Yuna thought every day. She wanted to die quickly, until an incident where she was almost dying, losing a lot of blood on the way to the hospital during a mission. The girl had been shot and they couldn't stop the bleeding. The doctor said there was no more blood left, wondering if they should send her to another hospital, but another doctor says they can just dispose of her, which scared the girl. But in the end, it would have been better if she had died at the beginning. She knew what this place was and that this day would come soon, but she had no regrets, as that was good. The next day, the doctor wakes her up saying it was a miracle she survived, but after this miracle, her younger brother Eugen had disappeared. The doctor tried to stop him, but it couldn't be done. He said that to save his older sister, it didn't matter if he died and everything was over. In a rush to her brother's room, Yuna thought she had no family, but he was there watching her. And while hearing a doctor saying to dispose of her because it was too expensive, Yuna tells them not to do that, as she will pay the hospital bill. And finally, this was the first time she had a reason to live. Back to the present, Yuna tells Peter that it didn't matter if he was her blood brother or not, she would do everything to save him. Peter tells her to finish her training, as she poked her nose where it wasn't called, but Yuna says he was the strongest person she had ever seen and asks if Peter could help her become stronger. Peter mocks her, asking if that's how she asks for a favor, then agrees, and asks for her teacher's instructions. Peter begins by saying that Yuna is weak, not born with a good physique, and is scared of many things, having a terrible behavior, which is horrible for an assassin. However, she has the best vision for an assassin, as from the day at the restaurant to the fight against Jong, she never looked away from a fight, as if trying to absorb all the techniques seen. He continues by saying that baseball players who frequently hit home runs are able to see the trajectory of the ball coming, and Peter assures that dynamic visual acuity is way beyond theirs. Yuna blushes asking who told him to praise her, and then he continues by saying there is a weapon that can turn limitations into advantages, and that is the only weapon she can use to defeat anyone. So, if she learns to control it properly, she will be able to do well even without a teacher, making her a true assassin. After a few days, the brothers have money in hand, mocking that they earn $1 million a week as official assassins and wondering how much they would earn if they became an apostle. Sungo then asks where Yuna was, and Jay replies saying she's probably at her part-time job, where she cleans up the mess left behind by assassins, and they didn't understand why she went so far, questioning if it was to buy food because she ate a lot, but that was to save money, as the cafeteria food was free. Hyung says that to become successful, one also needs to spend a lot, giving tips to Sungo, who just ignores both and continues to think about how she could use all the money for herself, so she was keeping a secret from her younger brother. But everything is interrupted by a message from Yuna, asking the brothers to bring her scarf. Arriving at an ice factory, Jay asks Hyung why Yuna called such precious people to that place, but Yuna says they were silly because they couldn't afford cafeteria food not long ago. The brothers give up and ask what she was doing there, and the girl replies that she was training. Jay questions if she was breaking those ice blocks with her hands, but the girl denies, saying she was using her new weapon, the rope dart, a traditional wushu weapon that involves wrapping the rope around the body and throwing the dart at the enemy. Due to the added rotation in the throws, it becomes much more destructive when thrown normally, and the other advantage is that the enemy won't know when and where the dart will fly. However, the brothers mock again, saying it would be better to use a gun as it is very strong, for breaking an ice block at once, but still, it was just a toy. Yuna agrees, as a gun is more efficient in one shot and one death, but against 5 people, the rope dart can convert one shot into 5 deaths. Yuna then throws the dart towards 5 cubes, cutting them in a horizontal row. Once again, the brothers are amazed, asking each other if they could buy a rope dart on the free market. Several hours pass, and the owner of the ice factory, Park Binsu, a D-rank assassin, asks Yuna how her training went, and she agrees, saying she will clean up afterward. But Binsu tells her to forget about the cleaning because he had seen many people come there to train by breaking ice, but it was the first time he saw someone destroy ice like her. Yuna takes out money to pay for the ice, but Binsu tells her that a few hours ago, Sungu had come there to pay him in advance, gave him 1,000,000 wons, and handed him something. Binsu then tosses ointment to Yuna, saying that Sungo said she needed it to apply before it scars. Yuna pulls out her phone as she leaves, thinking about what she should say to Sungo, but gives up and calls him, who answers and asks what the reason for the call was. Yuna says it was just to know what was for lunch today at school, and Sungo replies that it is spicy pork and strawberries, her favorite. But then, Peter congratulates her on getting a real weapon and says he will see her later. Meanwhile, the brothers are training next to him, trying to throw a rope dart but failing miserably, and Sungo leaves, thinking that the weapon she had been seeking had always been with Yuna, and the girl never realized it, then showing a photo of the girl dancing ballet. Meanwhile, Park Sango finds himself having to fight against several C and B rank assassins, easily defeating them until he notices another person walking over the fallen bodies, saying that a B rank can't do anything, much less a C rank, so to kill an A rank, Park Sango, they need an apostle to come there and complete the task. Everyone kneels as the man passes by, and Sango drops the weapon, while the man completes his sentence by saying he heard that the boy liked bets, so he should make one with him. The assassin Park Sangdo, who was about to become an S-rank apostle, could he win against a true apostle? And in fear, Sangdo responds by shouting his name, Apostle Nathaniel. In a hospital, the brothers laughed at a child throwing a tantrum out of fear of needles, while in reality, they were even more afraid, asking if they could be anesthetized. Becoming an assassin requires undergoing a physical exam consisting of various tests at the Divine Honor Hospital managed by Glory, and everything was going well for Sungu, but her biggest concern was the blood collection because the reason for collecting blood is simple, to put a collar on the assassins, as biological and digital information does not change over the years. So if one betrays the organization and flees, the collar will allow them to be found and killed, so it's just a matter of time until they discover that Peter's DNA stored here and Kim Sungu's DNA extracted today are the same. In other words, Sungu's identity will be exposed. Upon visiting the blind woman's house again, she asks what he did today, and Peter replies that he collected blood, but she starts hitting him, saying that first he picks a fight with an extremely dangerous B-rank assassin and now had his blood collected, as if announcing that he is Peter. But Peter says he does not plan to stand still and be attacked. He plans to bomb the hospital. However, he is reprimanded again by the woman, whom he calls Jaiwon, and she said she knows that the hospital is a place revered by glory, being one of the largest in Korea and may seem normal on the outside. But they cover up the murders with medical errors, getting rid of injured assassins, hiding bodies, and so on, being a hospital run by assassins for assassins, and Peter's DNA is in the hospital's database, so there is no other choice but to bomb it. Jinwoo says she will go along with this idea but asks if Peter knew who was running the hospital, the disciple Nathaniel, and adds that he wasn't even human, despite his full-time job being a doctor. He was said to be a genius doctor given by God, but he caused a medical accident and went into hiding. However, 4 years ago in Brazil, gang members' bodies from Rio were found hanging from lampposts, but everyone is pointing fingers at each other and does not want to say who is to blame. Therefore, a police operation began, where upon entering a location, the officers smelled a lot of gunpowder, wondering if there had been a shootout, but soon noticed something was wrong, several twisted weapons and no one in the place, and more importantly, if that was a fight between humans. However, a soldier notices a hand holding his head and pulling him into a room, and then someone comes out, saying they want someone stronger. So, seeing several bodies hanging from the ceiling, and on that day, the 6 gang leaders who were above the law and ruled the river for 30 years, and the world's best police officers were massacred in one day. Jinwoo asks Peter what he thinks of this information, and he tells her he has some suspicions, asking if it is really possible to bend weapons with bare hands, and Jinwoo says that this information came from the government's most confidential files, so they are not false, and this monster is at the Divine Honor Hospital. Instead of grabbing the bull by the horns, it's better for Peter to find a shortcut. The boy says that thanks to Jinwoo's information, he was able to think about infiltrating. The girl says she gives up, and it just wasn't meant for him to die when he enters, and Peter asks her if she can help because he has a plan. The next day, a billboard appeared all over Seoul, saying that Peter will visit the Dr. Nathaniel, and a man reports to Jinwoo that as she had requested, he hacked Glory's server and posted the announcement created by Sungu, but if Glory finds out, she will be in danger, and to think that she would put her life at stake because of a joke made by a 19-year-old. Jinwoo interrupts, saying that such a result is possible. However, this is something she had never seen before, thinking about how that reckless man never failed in any of the missions he planned in 50 years. Going to the hospital, several Glory assassins are gathered, wondering if Peter was really alive and they would see the true greatest assassin in the world, while others think about how to capture Peter. Even though he is old and wrinkled, he is still an apostle. But another guard says that those who will deal with him will be A and B rank assassins from Brazil, who are notably violent just by looking at them. Another guard says that A-rank assassins, who are hard to find, and Apostle Nathaniel in person were there, so they never imagined seeing a fight between apostles and wonder who would win. One of the guards suggests it would be Nathaniel because Peter is almost 70 years old and still has cancer, but the brothers appear and say that victory will surely be Peter's, but they are soon reprimanded by the guards for supporting those who will capture him. A man draws the crowd's attention and explains that when they are with Peter, they should not try to fight but pretend to show respect and approach using the tranquilizer gun because he can bring down an elephant in 3 seconds. Moreover, the moment they spot him, they should press the emergency button, which will reveal the person's location, and the A-rank assassins will go there to assist them. Sungu then pretends to understand and goes to his position, starting the hunt for Peter. Meanwhile, several of the Glory leaders, including Choi Yun-chang, gather in a bathtub. They talk among themselves about Peter's betrayal, with a white-haired man saying he was worried about him picking a fight with Peter because apparently they can't find him, but what if he comes back and stirs up trouble? Another man questions Yun Chang about how excellent Peter is, to which he remains silent. The white-haired man says that if the Glory leader doesn't catch Peter, he should give up so they don't have to act. Outraged, the leader says he hadn't thought of that and will keep to himself from now on, pushing the white-haired man's head into the pool and adding that the elder's hospitality made him forget where he was thinking if Peter managed to defeat the genius he created. Back at the hospital, Sungo snaps the neck of one of the assassins, but it was actually chiropractic, where he was taking care of a patient, and then asks if he knows the patient Na Hyunil, but the patient had never heard of that name. Moving down the hallway, Peter thinks about how he needs to find Nathaniel, but there was no person named Na Hyunil, wondering if he had gone into hiding to discard his identity, but in any case, he was only sure of one thing: Nathaniel is somewhere in this hospital, so it's a race against time to see who finds each other first. Soon his attention is drawn by the brothers disguised with broken legs and arms, asking what he was doing, but Sunga responds by asking why Jay isn't sitting if he has broken legs, but he tells Sunga not to worry about the details. Peter asks about Yuna, and Hyung replies that since Yuna is below rank 335, she is not on this mission. and Sungu was the brother's right-hand man, so he shouldn't pay attention to someone as weak as her. Jae says they searched the entire lobby for Peter but found nothing, and Hyung adds that if he sees someone suspicious, he should call one of them because Sungu is cool, so they will protect him. They then notice an elderly man dressed similarly to Peter in the photo, and the brothers go to confront him, while Sungu says that's not Peter, but Jae and Hyung don't care, whispering to the old man that they will help him escape. A nurse soon calls Sungu, asking if he needs a syringe to restrain the old man, but the boy refuses, saying he has already collected his blood and thinking that this is the hunt for Peter, who finds his blood first. The old man continues to be desperate with the brothers trying to make him escape, but soon Hyung bumps into Yuna, who is running in a hurry. He questions why Yuna is there if she doesn't have the level for it, but the girl says her brother was hospitalized, so she came to visit him. Sungo becomes worried, asking why Yuna was there, but he is soon interrupted by Jinwoo, who questions if it was the time to worry about his students and if he has figured out how to find Nathaniel because it seems that the HR department doesn't know anything. Peter says that he and Nathaniel are searching for each other and wonders if there is a way to make him reveal himself without exposing that he is Kim Sungu. Soon, he notices one of Nathaniel's agents, named Rodrigo, who orders him to do his job right, or else he will die. Then, Peter comes up with an idea of what to do, telling Jinwoo to start part 1 of his plan, to which Jinwoo just smiles and says his boys are getting their hands dirty. Some time passes, and Rodrigo is in a surgical room, waiting for treatment, when a surgical operator arrives, introducing himself as Kim Sungo, a rank D assassin, and immediately asks where Nathaniel is. Rodrigo questions why a mere rank D wants to know where he is, and is soon answered by Peter, stating that an assassin only asks where someone is if they intend to kill them. At the same moment, Nathaniel is watching the security cameras, noticing the recording from the 3rd floor operating room where the fight took place. In just 10 seconds, Peter manages to kill Rodrigo, a rank B, revealing the face of the old Peter as he removes the operator's mask. So if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and comment what you thought. Until next time, guys.